Hi, and welcome to Math Antics. In the last video, we learned how easy it is to add and subtract fractions that have the same bottom number. We call those like fractions. But often you'll be asked to add or subtract fractions that have different bottom numbers, or unlike fractions. And we learned that the only way we can do that is to change our fractions so that they do have the same bottom number. Alright then, how do we do that? How can we change two unlike fractions into two like fractions? How do we get our fractions to have a common denominator? The answer is we need to use equivalent fractions. You remember what equivalent fractions are, right? They're fractions that have the same value but use different top and bottom numbers, like 1 over 2 and 2 over 4. They both represent 1/2 but with different numbers. Well, whenever we have two unlike fractions that we need to add, if we could find equivalent fractions to use instead, and if those new equivalent fractions had the same bottom numbers as each other, then we'd be all set. We'd have two like fractions, and we could add them using our procedure. Okay, but how do we find equivalent fractions that have a common denominator, or the same bottom number? Well, there's two main ways of doing it. And I like to call this way finding the easiest common denominator. So how does this easiest common denominator method work? Well, even though this is an easy method, it might sound a little complicated at first. But don't worry, it'll make a lot more sense once you've seen a few examples. In this method, the common denominator is always going to be the product of the bottom numbers. In other words, it will be the number you'd get if you multiplied the bottom numbers together. Basically, all we're going to do is take the two different bottom numbers and make two different whole fractions using them. Then, we're going to move the whole fractions to the opposite sides and multiply them by our unlike fractions. Doing this will give us two new equivalent fractions that will have the same bottom number. Then, we can add or subtract them easily. Okay, let's try a couple examples so we can see this method in action. Let's add the fractions 2 over 5 and 1 over 3. These are not like fractions because they have different bottom numbers, so we're going to change them. And the common denominator we will use is the product of the bottom numbers. 5 times 3 equals 15. We change them by multiplying each fraction by a whole fraction. The first whole fraction is going to be 3 over 3, because 3 is the second fraction's denominator. And the second whole fraction is going to be 5 over 5, because 5 is the first fraction's denominator. Next, we multiply starting with our first fraction. On the top, 3 times 2 equals 6. And on the bottom, 3 times 5 equals 15. So our first fraction has become 6 over 15. Now for the second fraction. On the top, 1 times 5 equals 5. And on the bottom, 3 times 5 equals 15. So our second fraction has become 5 over 15. Now we just add them using our procedure for adding like fractions. We add the top numbers, 6 plus 5 equals 11, and then we keep the same bottom number, which is 15. So that means the answer to 2 over 5 plus 1 over 3 is 11 over 15. That's pretty easy, huh?
So I'm here with Sloan, and we were just talking about the easiest way to find a common denominator. So this is strategy number 2 that we're going to work on, and this is called cross multiplying. What's it called?
Cross multiplying.
So me and Will are going to go over to our window, and we're going to do some work to figure out cross multiplying, to find a common denominator. Can you say cross multiplying? Yeah. Okay, so we're at my workstation here. I had to be creative. So our last video, I like the way that he showed you how to do and solve the fractions. But I think that this way is very similar to his, but I think it's a little bit easier, and this is just cross multiplying. So what we're going to do is we want to add 3/5 plus 2/3, but we can't add these because our denominators are not equal, like we said. So in order to make our denominators equal, what I'm going to suggest is something very simple, and it's called cross multiplying. So all you're going to do is this. You're going to take this 5 and you're going to multiply the 2 and multiply the 3 by 5. That's it. So what I'm going to do is below here, I'm going to go 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 3 is 15. So there's my addition sign. So I changed this 2/3 into 10/15. Now what I'm going to do for the other side here is I'm going to cross multiply this 3 times 3, and 3 times 5. So if I go 3 times 5 is 15. Now I can see that my denominator here and here are both 15s, so they're the same. And 3 times 3 is 9. So it's a little bit hard to see. There we go. Okay, so 9 fifteenths plus 10 fifteenths equals 19 fifteenths. Okay, now you could be done now by 19 fifteenths, or what you could do is you could convert this into a mixed number. So 15 fits into 19 once, and it leaves me with 4 fifteenths left over, and I can see that there is nothing that equally divides into 15 and into 4. So this answer is finished. So for me, the easiest way is cross multiplying. And I'll do another example. Okay, my last example here is a subtraction question. I have 7/9 minus 3/4. I'm going to do my cross multiplying, so I'm going to move a step below. Okay, and so 3 times 9 is 27. 9 times 4 is 36, and this is a subtraction question. And so then I will do my cross multiplying here. 4 times 9 is 36. My denominators are now the same. And then 4 times 7 is 28. So now I can do this. 28 minus 27 equals 1/36. There's my answer. I can't get any lower because that's a 1. That's it, cross multiplying. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top.